So I don't know. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the July 25th, 2022 meeting of the Danville Utility Commission to order. Ms. Davis, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Adkins?
Here.
Ms. Kane?
Here.
Mr. Dobbins?
Here.
Mr. Ingram? Ms. Kotzman?
Here.
Mr. Merricks? Dr. Miller? Ms. Williamson?
Here.
Ms. Williamson Branch?
Here.
Well, everyone, it is Officer Election Day. As you know, it is the duty of the Utility Commission every year to elect a chair and a vice chair to serve a one-year term. Each election will start with the nominations for the position. These nominations will come to the floor. If you want to make a nomination, please do so by stating the last name of the person you wish to nominate. Once the nomination period is closed, we will proceed to a vote. And please vote at that time by stating the last name of the person for whom you're voting for. I will now open the floor for nominations for the office of chair. Do I hear any nominations? Okay, we have a nomination for Ms. Kane. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we will close the nomination period and proceed to a vote. Ms. Davis, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Adkins?
Kane.
Ms. Kane?
Kane.
Mr. Dobbins?
Ms. Kane.
Ms. Kotzman?
Kane.
Ms. Williamson?
Kane.
Ms. Williamson Branch?
Congratulations, Madam Chair. We will now proceed to the vote for Vice Chair, and we will now proceed to the nomination period. Do we have any nominations from the floor?
Dobbins.
We have a nomination for Mr. Dobbins. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll close the nomination period and proceed to a vote. Ms. Davis?
Mr. Adkins?
Dobbins.
Ms. Kane?
Dobbins.
Mr. Dobbins?
Abstain.
Ms. Kotzman?
Dobbins.
Ms. Williamson? Ms. Williamson Branch?
Dobbins.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair. I will now turn the meeting back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. Are there any additions to the meetings from the May 23rd meeting? Edits or deletions?
Mr. Chair, I move the minutes be accepted as provided.
I second. Thank you. Ms. Davis, the roll, please.
Mr. Atkins? Ms. Kane?
Yes.
Mr. Dobbins?
Yes.
Ms. Kotzman?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson? Ms. Williamson?
Second.
Ms. Williamson Branch?
Yes. Okay, next we have the review of the utility financial statements. Ms. Hawley, please.
Good afternoon.
No.
Today we are reviewing the May statements, which completes 92% of fiscal year 2022. The wastewater fund begins on page 14. The wastewater fund reports operating revenue of $8.2 million, and it's on track with budget at 92%. This is a net increase of 0.71% or $57,000 from the prior fiscal year, primarily in industrial and residential sales. Operating expenses are behind budgeted levels at 84.5% and ahead of the prior year with a net increase of $17,000 or 0.27%. The net increase in operating expenses is due to a timing difference between years in the payments to the operator at the Northside Wastewater Treatment Plant and an increase in bad debt, offset by a decrease in distribution in the current year. With revenues reported ahead of budget and expenses below, net income is reported at $908,000. That exceeds the budget, and it is a $113,000 decrease when compared to the prior year. The water fund begins on page 15. The water fund reports operating revenue behind budget at 84.1% and $7.6 million. While comparable to the prior year, it was a decrease of 1.06%, around $82,000. That was primarily in industrial sales that was offset by an increase in residential sales. Operating expenses of $5.8 million are behind budgeted levels at 85.5% and are decreased 0.14% or around $8,000 from the prior year. The decrease is within distribution, service, and administration, offset by increases in most other operational areas. The most significant decreases are within distribution and administration. For the prior year, included emergency repairs that we have not experienced to date, and in administration within allocated expenses. After including non-operating revenue and expenses, the Water Fund reports net income after transfers of $1.03 million, which is a decrease of 13.8% and $165,000 as compared to the prior year. It's also behind budget at 79.3%. The Gas Fund begins on page 16. The Gas Fund concluded the first 11 months of the fiscal year with revenue of $24.2 million. That reflects an increase of $5.6 million or 30% when compared to the prior fiscal year. Prior year sales reflected COVID-related closures in both industrial and commercial customers. With year-to-date sales and gas purchases ahead of budget, margin is slightly behind budget. It's at 33.4%. Year-to-date, decatherms sold increased to 139,000 when compared to the prior year. That was 207,000 in the industrial sales category, offset by a decrease in residential of around 49,000. Page 19 of your package includes all of those details. Total operating expenses ran under budget at $3.95 million, or 78.4% of budget. Operating expenses are decreased around $61,000 from the prior year. That was primarily in allocations, wages, and depreciation within administration and in contractors within distribution. Net income before transfers was $4.2 million as compared to the prior year net income of $3 million. After transfer net income was $1.2 million as compared to the prior year net income of $168,000. The gas cost recovery was an under recovery of $75,000 on May 31st. That was increased to an over recovery of around $127,000 on June 30. The Electric Fund begins on page 17. The Electric Fund reports operating revenues of $112 million, or 92% of budget, which reflects an increase of 6% or $6.4 million from the prior year. Purchase power costs were ahead of budget as well at 95.3% and slightly ahead of sales. Overall, year-to-date kilowatt-hour consumption increased by 0.68% or 5.6 million kilowatt-hours compared to the prior year. Most significantly, this was in the industrial classification at 10.7 million kilowatt-hours. Decreases were experienced in both outdoor lighting and residential sales, a combined 6.3 million. Total operating expenses of $19.1 million are below both sales and budget at 84%, yet increased by around $236,000 as compared to the prior year. The increase is primarily in transmission, that was labor and benefits, contractors and materials at the substations for reliability and troubleshooting, and in general and administration, salaries and benefits, allocations, and maintenance contracts. The fund reports net loss after transfers of $3.9 million. That's ahead of the budgeted loss of $2.6 million and comparable to the prior year net loss of also around $3.9 million before considering the gain on the sale of the Pinnacles. The power cost recovery was a cumulative under recovery of $54,000 on May 31st. The PCA under recovery balance decreased $29,000 in the month of June to an under recovery of only $25,000 at June 30th. The Telecommunication Fund begins on page 18. Telecom revenue of $685,000 is ahead of the prior year. That's an increase of around 9.2% or $58,000, and it's also ahead of the budget at 103%. Purchase services are also ahead of the budget at around 113% and ahead of the prior year by $6,000. General and administrative expenses are increased by $9,000, and that is in allocations in comparison to the prior year, but are below budget at 81.1%. With both revenue and expenses ahead of budget, the fund reports net loss after transfers of $221,000. That is compared to the prior year net loss of $263,000.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Ms. Hawley. Next, we have the power supply update. Mr. Gray?
Good afternoon.
No.
I want to provide an update on our power supply. I've tried to do this at least once a year. Market price increases, electric market price increases have increased substantially over the past 12 months, mainly because of the transition between fossil fuel generation to more renewables because of policy mandates. Also because of the events in Europe, moving more gas supply to the European countries has increased gas prices here in the United States, which has increased gas power generation here in the United States as well. If you can see the graph here, prices on the third line were the week of the June 25th, 2021 were around $35 a megawatt hour. Same time this year, they were over $100 a megawatt hour, so it's quite substantial increase there. Fortunately for our customers, about 90% of our power supply is hedged in long-term contracts, so we're not seeing as dramatic of a cost increase as other utilities that are completely on the market. We have about a 10% of our supply on the market. As you can see here, it's 11%, that slice of pie there that says net market. But Prairie State is a coal plant in Illinois, Aep is a gas plant in Ohio, and the rest of the smaller slices are either hydro or solar. So we have about 23% that is renewable. This is a graph showing our monthly consumption and our market exposure for next year. So the yellow is showing our exposure to the market. So I'll mention a strategy going forward for next year and going forward into 24 and so forth. But we look to have more of an exposure in the winter and summer when our demand is higher, of course, than we do in the spring and the fall. We actually are long in energy in May and November, slightly, but we do have some needs in the winter and summer. Moving to 2024, as you know, we have some new industrial customers coming to the area. We are calculating their load growth, so it's almost a 10% increase in our kilowatt hours moving forward. So we'll be looking to procure energy going forward, and I have a recommendation actually today to help with some of that long term. Questions so far? Just talking a little bit historically about power prices. We've enjoyed this 10-year period of time when market prices were very low. They were in the $25 to $35 range, as that red line indicates. For 2021 back to 2011, 2012, gas prices were low, which translate into low electric prices. Here over the past 10 months, that has reversed. Gas prices have risen, and so have electric prices with it. Don't want to forecast what they will look like going down the road. Hopefully, certain mechanisms and policies will be put in place to help hedge that or remedy that, but hopefully we have some levelization going forward that will protect consumers. to transmission and capacity. So we purchase capacity we're part of the PJM grid, and PJM stands for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, but it's also Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, parts of Indiana and Illinois and other states. So we have to purchase capacity in the grid. PJM is a organization that doesn't own generation or transmission. It's their job to dispatch generation to where load is the most economical way possible. So they dictate what the price for capacity will be for the next 3 years. Typically capacity is around $4 a kW. This year it's dropped down considerably down to $1.52, and then next year it's $1.04. So we kind of wear two different hats. We are a customer, we are a load serving entity that we pay for capacity, but we also own generators, Prairie State, AEC, solar farms, hydro facilities, where we receive capacity revenue. So when capacity prices are lower, we don't receive as much revenue for those assets. We also don't pay for what we don't have contracts for as well. So we have to keep an eye on that when we're forecasting our budgets for the next year. Aep Transmission Cost, many of you have heard me talk about this in the past. Transmission costs have increased substantially over the past 10 years. It's forecasted to slow down a little bit, not as much as it's been over the past 5-7 years, where it's been 15-20% increases every year, which is drastic increases, maybe 5 to 7% going forward for the next 7 years or so. But we're forecasted to pay $10.22 a kW per month in 2022. Looking back to 2014, we were paying $2.50. So that's a 4 times cost increase in 10 years. So that's a drastic increase to our customers. And this is a cost increase that we're trying to put mechanisms in place to avoid. We do peak shaving to avoid our capacity and transmission peaks. We send out peak notices. We have solar farms here locally, hydro facilities, getting ready to put into play our battery storage project, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. So all these mechanisms help reduce our transmission avoidance and cost and save our customers money. Speaking of that, the savings, just on the transmission side for 2021, you can see the assets that we have here locally, Pinnacles and the solar farms, and we do have some diesel peakers that we only run during these hot days and very cold days when the system is very strained. But just on the transmission side, we saved our customers over $3 million. So that's very significant when our power supply is about $95 million a year. One on the capacity side, additional $2 million. So $5 million for peak shaving just a few hours of the year adds up. It's a very significant cost savings to our customers. The strategy going forward is to help with some of the volatility in the market. I showed you a slide of some energy blocks, power prices being over $100 a megawatt hour, when a year ago they were $25, $35 a megawatt hour. So we're looking at hedging our risk, lowering our risk volatility. I have a solar project recommendation here coming up here in a minute. We want to make layered approaches. We don't want to purchase all our needs at one time. We want to make several purchases and layer them so that we're not going all in and then the market change and potentially lose out on a cheaper, better solution later on. And we're also doing that on the gas side, making small purchases so we can take advantage of some lower valleys in that peak and valley period in the market. Then we can also purchase further out. We can purchase energy and gas 10 years out. Do we want to do that? Probably not, because we don't know what the future holds, but maybe look 3 to 5 years out and make some purchases and protect our risk. So developing a 3 to 5 year strategy is probably pretty wise right now because of the volatility in the market. And I mentioned the battery storage project. We're looking to have, that project is, I would say, 95% complete. We're just waiting on the actual batteries to get here. The containers and everything else is in place. Looking to have the batteries on site second week in August, and tentatively looking at having a ribbon cutting on September 14th. So look forward to your invitation coming out very soon. But that battery project will be available going forward for the next 20 years, and will take 10 megawatts off the system and save our customers a lot of money. And we're also evaluating future battery projects. We're going to operate this one for a period of time, and then look at potential other projects and how they may help our customers. We're also looking at a smart thermostat program where customers who have smart thermostats can opt in to a established program where they can pre-cool their house, and then during those couple hours where there's a peak, they can not use their HVAC equipment and be compensated for that. So that's a program we're looking at here over the next 6 to 8 months to potentially roll out. A lot of utilities are already doing this. So it's a completely volunteer program, and if a customer doesn't want to participate, that's totally their choice. But as more smart thermostats get adopted, the opportunities are endless as far as peak shaving and other ideas. And then time of use rates, we just implemented time of use rates earlier this month, so customers can take advantage of lower costs by avoiding the peak. And there are lower rates during off-peak times and higher rates during on-peak times. So if customers are interested in signing up for the time of use program, it is active as of July 1st of this month. So approximately 19% of the total hours are on peak. So if you do the math, majority of the hours are off peak. Weekends are off peak. Most major holidays are off peak. So it's only a few hours that are technically on peak. So customers, a lot of utilities have moved to completely time of use. They've done away with their standard rates, but we'll slowly move forward with this and see how our customers like it or don't like it. Very general power supply update. Can I be glad to answer your questions?
Gas, during this time of the year for use in the cold months, it looks like the winter could really be a ugly scenario, possibly.
So we're looked in.
I don't mean necessarily for us, but
we're always actively injecting. When we're long on gas, we inject it into storage at whatever the price is for that day. So we'll use whatever our blended storage price is for this winter. So we'll look to have that available in January and February. But approximately 55% of our needs are met for this winter. We're looking to move that up to 75-80% at least. But yeah, Transco, the gas pipeline that we're connected to, not only are gas prices increasing because of what's happened in Europe, but Transco is having some operational issues as well, and that's increasing prices as well. They're having some compressor station issues, which is adding to that $8.50 a decatherm price. So prices on Transco are more like $12 right now. Lucky enough to have a lot of gas hedged out to avoid those price spikes and looking to hedge more. And we've bought some gas out into 2024 and 2025 to protect our volatility.
Thank you. Other question. I'm reading a lot in the last several weeks about potential for electrical blackouts in some major parts of the country. The maps I've seen, charts I've seen, don't include this part of the country in that potential, fortunately, but I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure, what the magnitude of all that is.
So I've seen similar maps across the country, and we're very fortunate to be in an area that we're not having to deal with those types of issues. We have a very reliable system in the southeast, and even back in June they had some unscheduled blackouts when a high demand period happened in Ohio. They had some blackouts just for short periods of time, but they were kind of surprising to a lot of the customers in Ohio. But if you look out west, they're having to move a lot of power into other states, so the transmission's not there. They're having drought conditions. Water's not available for hydro plants, that kind of thing. They're having significant issues as you get further out west. And if you look at the North American Reliability Council's map that was just published a couple months ago, that they have a one-page document that shows all the issues that go on west, Texas being, they're moving more to more renewables, wind and solar, and that's not always dispatchable, always there, and then gas prices going up in Texas and everywhere else too.
So you don't see, referring to that chart, that map, you don't see those shortages in the Midwest and the West, which is where it predominantly is, possibly bleeding over into our area, the way the grid flows and works.
We're in a low-risk area. They're in a mid to high as you get further west. But what we could see with that market section, if there were to be any issues, there's a domino effect that could happen with the market price. So as they try to move power into those areas, that's what we saw when Winter Storm Uri happened in February 2021. There was a domino effect as power was tried to be moved into the Texas area when they had that serious winter storm. But hopefully things have been looked at and remedied since February of 2021.
Good.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, the price of power would go up, and they would just move generation from one area to another. So they would just call on more expensive generation to feed us. So it would be a domino effect as you move from west to east. Potentially, that's what we saw during last year's winter storm for that market section, that market power. But like I said, 90% of our power supply is locked in. We wouldn't see any exposure with that 90%. We can dispatch it for the full 10.5 over 2 hours, or it can be 5.25 over 4 hours. So we'll use our partners' analytical software to kind of hone in on when that peak was most likely to happen, and then make a decision then whether or not to use the full amount for 4 to 5, or to space it out and use smaller amounts for a bigger window. But they have a lot of good analytical tools available to them that we'll utilize. Batch those batteries.
Question. Excuse me. Question. The analytical tool that you're talking about to look at peak, is that then built into the system to implement that automatically, or does it take some manual intervention to activate that?
I believe it takes manual intervention, but we're contracted based on their performance. So our price next year will be based on how they perform this year and so forth. So they want to perform at the fullest capacity of available tool.
I had a question about the smart thermostat program. Do you have, I don't know if you mentioned the timeline for the implementation of that, but how will you all be doing that to get the word out?
There'll be a lot of marketing involved on our end, so we'll do a lot of Facebook ads and bill stuffers. It'll probably be January, first of the year, before we get everything in order, if we move forward with it, but it's looking favorable.
Your recommendation?
Run through the AMP solar project here.
Okay.
So to meet some of our needs going forward into future years, American Municipal Power has a 150 megawatt solar project that they're trying to subscribe. Projects in western Ohio, they're looking for their membership to subscribe the whole 150 megawatts. If it can't be subscribed, then the project doesn't move forward. It's a 15-year purchase power agreement, which is different from our current contracts, which are basically ownership, take or pay contracts. So we don't pay them until energy is produced. So we pay for the energy produced at the facility, just like our solar contracts are structured here locally. It's not to exceed $50 a megawatt hour for the energy capacity and renewable energy credits. We're actually expecting that price to come down slightly. There's some talks about lifting some of the tariffs coming from China for solar equipment. So that may come down $4 or $5 before it's all said and done. So that would be even more beneficial to us.
Jason, would that potential decrease be reflected in our contracted price before we sign it?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry, how does that $50 cost compare with what we've been paying for our other solar project?
The Whitmore Irish Road project is $46 flat. The Ringgold project is $57 a megawatt hour, but it has a negative 2% de-escalator, so it goes down 2% every year. So it's very comparable to the other projects. The project is not looking to be online until late 2025, so it's a little ways out. There's a lot of projects in the PJM looking to be implemented. They have a huge backlog of projects. But moving forward, here's the net effect. If it is $50, we are able to monetize the capacity credits and sell the renewable energy credits. So the net cost will be somewhere around $30 or less, $25, $30, which is super compared to what the market is. The market currently is over $100 a megawatt hour. It doesn't look to be changed anytime soon.
I'm sorry, how much of our total need would this fill?
So this would be about 5%. So 2023 we'll have 11% on the market. 2024 looking at about 17%. So this will be about 5% of that need. So we'll layer it in with some short-term purchases as well, energy blocks.
And we're not responsible for any capital investment in any way. It's just a contractual pay for
whatever's produced.
Electricity is.
That's right. Yep. They go to investors and get the capital up front and then make payments as generation as energy is produced. So the company will go to an investor and see that they have contracts in place and get the money through that a group of investors.
I assume AMP is vetted and done the due diligence on this company that's mentioned that will manage it.
They have. They actually went through a request for a proposal process. They've been after this for over a year now, vetting different companies. They looked at projects all over the East Coast, and this project has risen to the top for a number of reasons. But they have taken their time and gone through a lot of due diligence to pick this as the one to pursue.
So that group can perform, and there's no concern over their ability to.
Yeah, Avangrid's been in the renewable business for a very long time. Yeah.
Mr. Gray has a recommendation on the table. Somebody would like to make that motion?
Accept the motion as presented or described.
I need a second. Okay, great. Ms. Davis, roll, please.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Ms. Kane?
Yes.
Mr. Dobbins?
Yes.
Ms. Kotzman?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson Branch?
Yes.
We're down to communications. Anything from the city manager's office? Okay. Commission members? Okay. I would like to welcome Ms. Williamson to our commission.
Thank you.
Okay. Any public comments? Director's report.
I was also just going to welcome Ms. Williamson to the Utility Commission and look forward to meeting with her tomorrow.
Great. All right. So our next.
Thank you.
Our next meeting is scheduled for August the 22nd at 4:00 p.m. If there's nothing else for today, I need a motion to adjourn.